Less inflation is good for all Australians, not just a few, for every single one of us. And rather than dividing the country, lower inflation brings the country together, giving all Australians a pathway to prosperity, giving every Australian the opportunity to fulfil their goals. And that is exactly what Peter Dutton outlined in his budget reply speech. Peter has clearly laid out that there are differences in the approach we would take. There are also places where we can find common ground with the government. We've again reiterated our support for ensuring that the NDIS is sustainable. As we did with the RBA review, I think very well this is something we're prepared to work with the government on in a collaborative way. The NDIS is too important. Securing its future should be above all politics. Now, well ahead of this budget, we were clear on the need for fiscal constraint and other sensible measures to take pressure off Australian households and businesses. It was a simple test for any party that seeks to claim it can manage the economy. Instead, we saw the opposite. We saw $185 billion of new spending since Labor came to office. $185 billion of new spending in the last year. $2 of new spending initiatives for every dollar of revenue initiatives. It's 2 to 1. Poorly planned migration that the Treasurer's own budget papers say will drive up housing costs in the budget papers. A fiscal strategy that removed fighting inflation from what was already called, I quote, the weakest fiscal strategy in living memory, quoting there the economist Stephen Hamilton. A failure to heed the calls of major business groups and economists to restore the fiscal guardrails that had been in the fiscal strategy since 1996, including a commitment to budget balance. And as has been pointed out by the Australian Financial Review's John Keogh, this budget even walks away from the Treasurer's one fiscal rule in the last budget. Far from returning 99% of the revenue windfalls to the bottom line, as promised in October, the government has banked just 40% of improvements in the bottom line since PFO and spent 60% or more of the massive windfall from strong commodities and job markets. Now, no one wins from a big spending government in an inflation crisis. At best, the budget fails to address inflation. At worst, it adds fuel to the fire. There is a credible case that it is actually making things worse. Rich Insights Director Chris Richardson said he, and I quote, had thought that the Reserve Bank was done and dusted, but this has notably raised the chance they will do another swing of the baseball bat. S&P Global Ratings disputed the government's forecast, stating we expect inflation to be stubbornly higher than the Reserve Bank's target until fiscal 2026, and that handouts in today's budget may add to inflationary pressures. And BetaShares Chief Economist David Bassis calls the budget unambiguously expansionary. Now, it's concerning to see the Treasurer, who spent more time spinning budgets than studying them, dismissing the views of economists so easily. Meanwhile, the government seems to have spent the last week trying to work out who this budget is supposed to help, rather than being focused on who it was supposed to help from the start.